Let's talk about Trump University, a former student named Sherry Winkleman. This is someone who went on CNN. This interview is fascinating. She was interviewed by Don Lemon on CNN, and she was asked about Trump University and whether she believes it was a scam and a fraud and whatever, and she's getting destroyed by right-wingers. I'll tell you why, but first let's look at the clips. Here is the first one where she explains the entire thing was an absolute debacle.
So you're a former Trump University student. Do you believe that it was a fraud, as the Attorney General has said?
Absolutely. No doubt in my mind.
So just as the New York Attorney General has said, you believe that it was a fraud. There were several...
I do believe. There
were several different packages. You want to talk more about that, about why?
Yes. First of all, I signed up for the 3-day introductory seminar at $14.95, and we were told if by the end of the first day that we didn't want to stay for the 3 days, we could have our money refunded. I asked the instructor a lot of direct questions. They completely evaded answering them, so I started getting upset, feeling that this was not an actual learning seminar, but maybe just an upselling seminar. I tried to get my money back, and two other instructors were brought over and basically cornered me, telling me that I just didn't understand the material. I was confused. It's overwhelming. It's real estate. After all, I'm a newbie. If I just stay for 3 days, you know, everything will become clear. So I had a very hard time from the get-go trying to get my money back.
You can get your money back anytime, but the only point at which you'll really know that you want your money back for sure would be after the 3 days when the offer for the money back is no longer valid. Trump has, look up a guy named Robert Kiyosaki, who's known as the rich dad, poor dad guy. He's worked with Trump. They both do these seminars where you don't really learn anything of value. A lot of it is just sort of create passive income streams by using techniques that probably won't work for most people to start acquiring rental properties. I mean, that's a lot of what this entire thing is. The partnership with Robert Kiyosaki was a big red flag for Trump. What this woman describes is exactly what it is that others are suggesting went on here. So now it gets even worse. Who was there? Who was being taken advantage of at Trump University, according to former student Sherry Winkleman? Take a look.
As you said, what kind of people were signing up for that $35,000 package?
There was a lot of seniors there that had lost money in the stock market, you know, so they were working with trying to rebuild their retirement. There was some husband-wife teams. I partnered up with a soldier that had just returned. There was a couple of veterans there from Iraq. He had gotten blown up in a tanker. He was on an honorable discharge, and he was trying to rebuild his life.
How
he
were they
also
paying
signed
for this?
Up. He wrote a check, and later the veterans' lawyers were able to help him with his case.
So seniors who had already lost a ton of money were desperate to try anything to rebuild their retirement accounts, hugely vulnerable. They sign up for Trump University scams and then combat veterans with serious injuries. Talk, Lewis, about preying on the most vulnerable in society.
It's pretty bad, and it might not be that they were targeted by Trump University or whoever is selling for them. But perhaps maybe that it's just the most susceptible people were just kind of drawn to it.
And now I'm glad you used the term targeted, because listen to this, what else Cheryl Winkleman had to say.
Were these people who were, these weren't wealthy people, were they?
No, what they did was really pressure people. The mentors singled out the people that they saw from the financial statements had available credit lines, because we filled out our checking, our savings, our credit cards, and our credit limits and our balances. And so the second day of the seminar, the mentors that we were supposed to be working with actually took us outside of the room privately to help us work on our real estate goals. And basically had really pressured people into calling their credit card companies to up their credit limits so that they could pay for these seminars.
Disgusting. This is one person's claims, I get that, but it matches so much of what we've heard. Why would they need to know your credit cards and limits if this is a seminar to teach you real estate? Red alert. and Sherry Winkleman is being given the full treatment for this interview. If you go to her website, which right-wingers have done, she appears to be like an actress. She does Marilyn Monroe impersonations. She seems to do a variety of things. And one of the things she says is that she likes working with women's groups that promote empowerment and success for women. Thus, the right-wingers are trashing Sherry Winkleman as a shill for Hillary Clinton who was paid to go and do this interview. We have no evidence that that's the case, but she's being given the full treatment. Maybe not by all right-wingers, but certainly by Trump supporters.
Not surprising. They have to defend their guy. Yeah, that's what they do. It does sound like a lot of what we've been hearing. This is exactly how it goes down. And I guess the targeting happened after you originally signed up, asking for all that information. Wow, Dave.
Absolute pond scum. If I'm missing something about the great opportunities presented by Trump University, send me a tweet. I'm on Twitter at @Pakman. And speaking of problems that Donald Trump is having with black voters, and speaking of trying to pander to black people in the most offensive and deceitful ways possible, Donald Trump tweeted a picture of a black family on Saturday that absolutely does not support Trump and is furious. Let's take a look at this image, Lewis. As you see here, this was a retweet from someone named Don Vito08. Trump has retweeted stuff from Don Vito08 in the past that is totally bogus. And it is someone, the message is, "Thank you, Mr. Trump, for standing up for our country." There's a picture of a very nice looking black family with the message, "American families for Trump. We need a common sense president." In March, Trump was criticized for sharing an unflattering image of Heidi Cruz compared to Trump's wife, Melania. And it was also generated by this user, Don Vito08 on Twitter. And as many people on Twitter were quick to point out, this photograph first appeared last year in an article from the Cincinnati radio station WCPO about a Midwest black family reunion. Here is the same picture for our TV audience, completely unrelated to Donald Trump. The family in the picture are identified only as the Perry family. Now, if you go to a Google image search and just type in black family, it's on the third row of results for me. It's the one with all the red arrows around it there. Just this is what you would call, Lewis, stock photography of a black family, which is not really stock. It's a specific family. And BuzzFeed figured out that this is the family of Eddie and Vanessa Perry. Eddie Perry told BuzzFeed News that his the picture is from this family reunion. He remembers the photograph being taken. He said he saw this on the internet, and that it was total political propaganda. Their image was used without asking, Lewis. And this reminds me, you know Ben Dixon, of course. You've met Ben Dixon, Lewis. You know Ben.
I know Ben, yeah.
Ben does the show here in the studio. He sits in your chair. Benjamin Dixon hosted the Benjamin Dixon Show. He happens to be black and a supporter of Bernie Sanders. And he once was tweeted this picture, which I'm going to put up for you, where this is Bernie Sanders speaking at Olivet Institutional Baptist Church in one of the Carolinas. And you'll see that there's a banner on the stage behind Bernie where Ben Dixon is pictured. And it's just, Ben has no connection to this church whatsoever. And he just appeared like in a collage of black people who support Bernie Sanders. And it's an example of identity politics being used on both sides, Lewis. I don't know that we gain anything from playing the identity politics game. I think it's sort of a dead end. We need to distinguish identity politics from real conversations about white privilege, individualism, classism, etc. Sometimes people who critique identity politics basically just want to dismiss that there are any inequalities in our society. That's not what we do. But sometimes these things don't really serve any productive purpose. Ben's picture just showing up at a church in South Carolina behind Bernie Sanders, it made no sense. And the Perry family showing up in this tweet also makes no sense. But the identity politics game is very strong among the Trump campaign, pointing out a black guy in the audience, tweeting a picture of a black family that doesn't even actually support Donald Trump. This is politics 2016.
He can just pay off as many black people as he wants to stand in crowds or stand behind him.
Right, he's done that.
Yeah, that's the smart way to do this, not this. I mean, couldn't he have at least had someone who's really good with Photoshop put a Trump T-shirt on one of the people in this family?
Right.
Or a Trump sign somewhere in the background?
And of course, Trump gets caught in lie after lie, and his supporters look the other way. They give him a free pass. They don't care. But not a good weekend as far as the black electorate and Donald Trump, that's for sure. I have a very disturbing story to tell you about. It starts with a judge named Aaron Persky, who sentenced a 23-year-old All-American former Stanford student named Brock Turner for sexually assaulting an unconscious female student behind a dumpster on the Stanford campus over a year and a half ago to 6 months in county jail, with the possibility, Lewis, if he behaves well in county jail, of dropping that sentence to only 3 months. I guess that good behavior would involve not raping more people in county jail or something. Turner could have been sentenced up to 14 years in state prison. Prosecutors asked for 6 years in state prison, and instead the judge decided on 6 months in a county jail with the possibility of only 3 months. What were the reasons? Well, Turner's age and lack of criminal history were cited. Persky explained the sentence thusly: a prison sentence would have a severe impact on him. I think he will not be a danger to others. Let me see if I get it. The impact to the rapist of an unconscious woman of being sent to prison might be negative. All of a sudden, Lewis, the justice system is concerned with the negative impact that prison has on people's lives. Not that the justice system shouldn't be concerned with that. I've argued that it hasn't been concerned with that for a long time. But we're going to take this case to make an example of that?
I guess when you are a white guy going to Stanford, that's when the white judges might be a bit worried about what prison does to you.
Well, to be very clear about the details, this isn't like a he said, she said type of thing. Nobody knows what happened. It's a mystery. Obviously, the girl doesn't know what happened because she was unconscious, but Brooke was spotted on top of his victim by 2 passing students. He ran. They tackled him and held him until campus security showed up. The victim woke up in a hospital the next day with no memory of what happened. Of course, no sexual assault trial is complete without finding fault with the victim and an excuse for the victimizer. In this case, they were both very drunk at the party, Lewis. As Brock said in court in defense of himself, being drunk, I just couldn't make the best decisions, and neither could she. Lots of people are making bigger, broader arguments about so-called rape culture. It's really bringing out a lot of really low, base, vile elements of the internet. But you don't even need to go that far. Let's not even have that conversation. This is about one specific case where the punishment is not commensurate with the crime. You've got the white former Stanford athlete. The level of intoxication was considered a mitigating factor, and you end up with a 6-month or possibly 3-month jail sentence. This feels reminiscent of that affluenza case, and we know how that turned out, with authorities tracking the kid and his mother down in Mexico after fleeing from his parole officer.
Which, of course, that was just a parole violation.
Right.
Somehow the parole violation triggered something, this massive hunt. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's the exact same type of thing. We've covered other stories that are kind of similar, where well-to-do white person, for some reason, gets almost no sentence.
And for people who are going to email us and say we're playing up the social justice warrior nonsense that's popular on the internet among leftists, anybody who listens to the show any reasonable amount knows that we don't do that. We critique identity politics, but sometimes there are valid questions. And I do wonder, Lewis, if this were a brown-skinned Syrian immigrant here legally, refugee status maybe, or just
not attending Stanford, by the way.
Not attending Stanford. Would the sentence be the same, and would people be satisfied with a 6-month county jail sentence when the max could have been 14 years in state prison? I truly wonder. I think the answer is no.
I think you're right. I agree.
Many times that type of question is out of place and not relevant, but I wonder here whether that is a good question. And you know what? If you want to email me and say, oh, there's David Pakman, the social justice warrior, blah, 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 do it if it makes you feel better. But sometimes these questions are legitimate, and when they're not, we call them out. You know we do, Lewis.
Yeah, it's just a hypothetical. We can't recreate the situation with, but it's worth asking. It's worth exploring.
Discuss this and any other stories from today's show on our Reddit discussion forum. Go to davidpakman.com/Reddit. That's REDDIT. I have 20 half-priced subsidized memberships available. If you want one, email me, first come, first serve, david@davidpakman.com. I have some video and audio to play for you from an interview from the O'Reilly Factor. This is Bill O'Reilly's program on Fox News. And it is being alleged that Donald Trump maybe inadvertently revealed that he is being fed the questions for these Bill O'Reilly interviews ahead of time. An issue was brought up by Bill O'Reilly to Donald Trump during this interview where Bill O'Reilly said, listen, there are these reports that the men on your staff are receiving significantly higher salaries than the women. And Donald Trump seemed to respond in a sort of joking way, but not really, that he knew he was going to get this question. And then you can sort of see the look in his eyes that he thinks, I should probably reword that and kind of make a joke about, I had a sense that this might come up. Some people are emailing me saying, David, this is completely unethical. The presentation of questions ahead of time should be disclosed, journalistic ethics, etc. There are others who are saying, all this is proof of is that Donald Trump has good handlers who know how to prep him for interviews. Of course, that does not seem to be the trend with Donald Trump. He does not seem to exactly put the best people around him. I'm going to play the video for you. We're going to listen to the audio, and then we'll see what we make of it. The allegation is Donald Trump may have inadvertently revealed that he knew the questions ahead of time before this interview.
Now, on the women front, the Boston Globe yesterday writes that you pay men in your campaign a third more in salary than you pay women. And this goes back to my theme that this is what you're going to be confronted with. Number one, is that true? Do you pay men a third more than women in your campaign?
The answer is no, and I just had to check because I heard this was going to be a question. I don't know, I have a good source, and somebody said that this could be a question. I just checked it, Bill, and the answer is no.
So Trump flips between, I heard this was going to be a question, then he gets a smirk on his face and says, well, we knew this could have been a question, and this is sort of drawing a little bit of a distinction. What do you think on this?
If I had to guess, I'd assume that he got questions ahead of time. I mean, it's Fox News. It's Bill O'Reilly.
O'Reilly has not been hugely critical of Trump.
Isn't this standard operating procedure at Fox when you have on someone who is conservative? I mean,
well, that's what I don't know. I mean, that's what I would like to know. The Society of Professional Journalists says that journalists should be both independent and transparent. If you are providing questions ahead of time, my view is you should present that at the beginning of the interview. Now, you may say, well, David, you've never said at the beginning of an interview that you've presented questions ahead of time. And the reason why is because we refuse to do that. So I have never had to issue that disclosure. We get asked, Louis, sometimes for the questions ahead of time.
Yeah.
And sometimes it'll go through Louis and you'll say to me, well, what should I say? And I say no. Say, obviously, we will tell you the topics. If we're going to have a guest on, it's not going to be a surprise. Are we talking about moon landing conspiracies or are we talking about quantum entanglements and Deepak Chopra? We have to provide some basis for the interview, but we have never provided questions ahead of time. So indeed, it would not be a huge shocker to me if Trump was given the questions ahead of time. It should be disclosed if that's the case.
I wouldn't ever expect anyone on Fox News to disclose that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're into journalistic ethics, Fox News is not for you. And I'm sure if you were to investigate enough, you would find all sorts of things to criticize.
Back when Elizabeth Warren was running for Senate in the U.S., and we've told a story where Louis had to confront a guy who was stalking Elizabeth Warren at our old studio. Her press handler at the time who booked the interview was sort of dancing a sort of fine line, but sort of a blurry area, I guess you would say, in terms of what it is we were going to talk about. And I kept sort of playing it cool and saying, we are going to focus on campaign issues, including the it was like very, very general. And she kept coming back, and I sort of could tell that if I said, here are the questions I'll be asking, she would have absolutely loved it. She didn't require it, though. We did the interview in our studio, and then afterwards she came up to me and she said, those weren't the questions you told me you were going to ask. And I just looked at her completely seriously and said, I didn't give you a list of questions. I gave you a list of topics, and everything I asked was within that purview, period. And, it did not become a big deal.
Yeah, and it's not like you were trying to sandbag her.
No.
I mean, and I have no problem telling a guest, depending on the nature of the interview, yeah, I mean, this is going to be, there aren't going to be any surprises here. I mean, you know, we're not going to catch you off guard with anything. We're talking about, you know, soccer or something like that.
And that's a different thing than saying we are not going to question the things you say. I mean, a good example is when we're having a guest on to talk about a book. We're very comfortable saying the interview is going to focus on the subject matter of the book. You're not going to be surprised about topics outside the book. That's sort of a separate question from whether there is going to be a critical analysis demanded during the interview about that subject matter. This is a common issue in journalism, and I would love to know whether these questions were presented ahead of time. Donald Trump seems to just not realize sometimes that either he is incorrectly giving the impression he got the questions ahead of time, or he is throwing Bill O'Reilly under the bus by admitting that he did.
Hard to say. It does seem he realized he slipped up and shouldn't have said what he said.
Yeah.
For what reason? Maybe we'll never know.
We'll take a break. Give us a like on Facebook, facebook.com/David Pakman Show. Let me tell you a little story about a 33-year-old former Little League coach named Jonathan Sean Russell, who has been sentenced to jail time for spanking the bare bottoms of players who apparently deserved the spanking based on a Christian child-rearing book, according to the Citizen Times. He pled guilty in North Carolina to 4 misdemeanor counts of assault on a child under 12 years of age. His sentence will be 60 days in jail and 18 months probation. The victims ranged from 8 to 9 years old at the time of the assaults. The arrest warrant claims that Russell pulled down the pants of the kids and their underwear and spanked them on the buttocks multiple times with his hands. He was reportedly influenced by a child-rearing advice book based in the Christian faith, Lewis, called Shepherding a Child's Heart. It's written by none other than Pastor Ted Tripp. Apparently, that is his real name. He read a passage from the book aloud during the trial on the witness stand, saying, "If you fail to spank, you don't take God seriously and don't love your child enough." So his bare bottom spanking of 8 to 9-year-olds that he was coaching in a Little League were based on taking God seriously and also loving those kids enough. Apparently, one of the kids was spanked for saying, "Dang it, dang it." He testified he also spanks his own kids. So if nothing else, this is what? Consistency?
There's some consistency, but they are not his kids. They are not his children.
Yeah.
So why is he using the book, Dave? My guess is that he just wanted to put his hands on the butts of these kids.
You think that that's fun? You don't think that this is religious delusions. You think this is just a guy who likes touching kids finding a reason to do it that's based in religion.
I'm sure that there is some religious delusion as well.
Yeah.
But the primary motivating factor here was probably just butt touching.
As part of his probation, he will not be allowed to be alone with children under 18 or be involved in activities with children under 18. We did this story about Christian spanking of wives by their husbands back in 2013. Clip went viral, almost 1.2 million views on YouTube so far. And every time we talk about this, I try to get it straight because it really exposes how bogus many of the issues we are told are issues really are. Baseball coaches are spanking 8-year-olds in North Carolina after pulling down their pants and underwear, but we need laws about which bathrooms transgender people use. Does this make any sense to anybody?
Yeah, to many people, Dave. You can find them on the YouTube comments of this video clip.
I'm starting to wonder whether the Christian right is so obsessed with people's sexuality and bathroom usage, etc., because they are the ones who are so perverted that they assume, listen, everybody must be as bonkers as us and we need laws.
Yes. Well, repression tends to lead to this type of behavior, I think. And there's, of course, a very long history of all sorts of repression within the church, right?
As long as this dude uses the right public bathroom, I don't think we should be that worried about the nude buttock spanking of children.
I'd prefer it if he were using a bathroom in his solitary confinement jail cell.
I was watching CNN yesterday, and during the 11 a.m. Eastern news hour, they brought on Republican Congressman Lee Zeldin to talk about Donald Trump's comments about a judge not being able to do their job because the judge's parents are Mexican. This is related to that Trump University fraud case. This interview happened after Republican Speaker of the House Paul Ryan already said Trump's comments are just flat out racist. Brace yourselves. This is really, really good. I've watched this thing 3 times now. I don't understand what Lee Zeldin is talking about. The linguistic acrobatics he's going through to try to explain why, even though what Trump said is racist, he still supports Trump. It's just amazing. So first, here's Lee Zeldin admitting, yes, there's no doubt that what Donald Trump said is racist. Take a look.
Speaker of the House Paul Ryan, the senior elected official of your party right now, says that Donald Trump made a comment that is the textbook definition of a racist comment. Do you agree?
Well, the way I subjectively define racism, I agree as well. I think that Mr. Trump made a regrettable mistake with his statement. I believe that it's a regrettable legal strategy. He's trying to win a case.
So yeah, this fits the definition, the dictionary definition of racism. We all agree it's racist, period. So then, do you still support Trump? Are you saying, oh yeah, this is definitely racist, but I still support the guy making the racist statements? Let's get that answer from Lee Zeldin.
Are you still comfortable supporting him?
Quite frankly, the policies that I have seen from the Democratic Party when you're micro-targeting a community and you are putting, there are blacks together and Hispanics together and certain economic messages and positions on issues, quite frankly, with the way I define racism, I see it a lot in policies and statements that has taken place. I've been in Congress for 18 months. I was in the New York State Senate for 4, and I think that...
I'm not saying are you now voting for Hillary Clinton, but are you still endorsing Donald Trump if you think he's engaging in racism?
Yes, it's Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton, and it's a no-brainer between the two of them.
Are you essentially saying that, yes, he's a racist, but he's our racist?
So are you supporting the racist? Well, Democrats are micro-targeting. That's the answer to, are you supporting the guy you admit is a racist? So then there's a follow-up, and then it gets even better.
I think that Donald Trump, as far as his character goes, he isn't making that statement because he feels like he is superior because, he is white and the judge is Mexican. I don't believe he's making that statement because internally, he feels like he is of a superior race. I mean, there is...
Right, but is a little bit racist okay?
Well, being racist at no one with any policy, with any statement, I quite frankly think that whether it is people who are running for president of the United States, people who have been in that position, people who are in Congress and state legislators, people running for office, the American public, that we all can do a lot better in the way we handle these issues.
What would you call someone who makes racist statements?
Does anybody understand what this guy is saying? So he's saying Trump did say something racist, but he didn't make the racist statement because he believes his race is better than Mexicans. I guess it's just like if you imagine 0, right? It's not that Trump thinks he being white is at a 10 and Mexicans are at a 4 because they're Mexican. He thinks that as a white guy, he's at a 0, but Mexicans are just worse. They're at like a -4. I mean, the logic, I can't follow the logic here.
When anytime someone starts saying, I quite honestly believe that no matter who you are, and you start naming positions and people, that's really bad. You know they're trying, they're really struggling at that point.
I have another section of this, and it's all about whether Lee Zeldin feels that Trump is racist.
How would you characterize
Everyone calls him a racist.
So if Donald Trump is making racist statements, you're saying he's a racist?
So again, if he internally felt superior because he is white and he's not Hispanic, if he felt superior because he was white and he wasn't black, or he was Christian and not Jewish, I mean, you could start getting into the weeds, internally as far as a person's character goes. But quite frankly, what I have seen through the years is an offensive micro-targeting on policy.
And there he goes again with the mic. So I think the point is, Donald Trump saying racist things is regrettable. But because Lee Zeldin doesn't know for sure that these racist beliefs are deeply and internally held by Donald Trump, he's giving him the benefit of the doubt. We can ignore the things Trump says because we can't know for sure if deep down in his head he's actually a racist.
What is even the point? I mean, why don't you just say, yeah, Donald Trump says some stupid things, but it's his policies that I support, and to me, that's more important. I don't think people would be angry at this guy for saying that. I mean, that's really what is going on here. So
it would at least be more coherent, you're saying. If
well,
not
I mean,
admirable.
clarity and coherence and continuity would be great when anyone is talking, yeah.
And then the cherry on top, what better way to distract from all of this than to just blame Obama for being racist?
Right, but
That-
here's the
that
thing.
the President of the United States
Don't you
is-
judge character on people's words? Isn't that the only thing isn't that one of the only things you have to judge a presidential candidate on
I believe
what
that
they believe
there's more
inside?
than there's more than just words to define a person. And by the way, aside from words, there's a whole lot more to define everyone. But you can easily argue that the President of the United States is a racist with his policies and his rhetoric. But you could go back presidents
But you're
of
not
the
arguing
past.
that. Just to be clear, you're not arguing that as racist.
I'm not here to call. My purpose here isn't to just go through the list and call everyone a racist.
No, just President Obama.
Yeah.
So this is just insane. I mean, you hear about the just blame Obama for anything thing, and that actually happening, a conversation about whether you were voting for the guy you admit is a racist, Donald Trump. Well, listen, Obama is actually the racist. What Obama has to do with any of this, I have no idea. So in this context of the attacks in Tel Aviv, Israel, during the the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, a French waitress was allegedly assaulted by two Muslim men for serving alcohol during Ramadan in France. The woman, interestingly, is a 30-year-old practicing Muslim of Tunisian origin. She was working on the terrace of the Viti Cafe in Nice, France, when she was reportedly insulted by two people who were passing by her yesterday. The men are said to have started to abuse her when they saw that she was serving alcohol to customers. She said one of the men screamed that she was a, quote, whore, and slapped her across the face, leaving her with a black eye after she was knocked to the ground. Police say that they have identified the men using CCTV, but have not yet located them. The waitress did not give her name because of fear of reprisals. She said, one of them said to me in Arabic, "You should be ashamed of yourself for serving alcohol during Ramadan. If I was God, I would hang you." She replied, "You're not God, and you cannot judge me," adding that she felt degraded, humiliated, and sullied following the incident, and mentioning that she used to serve alcohol in Tunisia without any issue whatsoever. She said, "It's not because I serve alcohol that I'm not fulfilling my religious duty. I do it because I'm a waitress. In Tunisia, I did the same job and never had the slightest problem." She said, "I don't think that in France, the country of liberty, you could be attacked for that. I didn't think that you could be attacked for that." Notice that she wasn't even serving these men alcohol, Lewis. These were just two men passing by.
Yeah, well, sounds like they are not men who would be ordering alcohol.
No, yes,
but,
good point.
Now here's a situation where I might bash a chair over someone's head.
If it was here, you might be more compelled to take action. Is this a sort of when in Rome scenario? I mean, as it's being mentioned, this is in France. When in France, you still try to enforce the Sharia-inspired beliefs of what should and shouldn't be allowed, in
Aren't
spite
we
of the
seeing
fact
that everywhere,
in
though?
spite of the fact that you're in a putatively secular society. I absolutely love France. I mean, it is one of my favorite places that I have ever been, and I hate the reality that there are some real problems going on in France. Last time I was there, armed military around a synagogue that was being rebuilt. I tried to take a picture of the security scene. I was immediately told no pictures are allowed here. High level of awareness and sort of alertness as to what's going on. We've seen numerous terror attacks perpetrated in France. We've seen rising anti-Semitism and the leaving from France of many Jews and increased concern over the context there. And here we're talking about a Muslim woman who was doing nothing wrong, right? Let's not forget that this is a Muslim woman who was just doing a job, which, by the way, she left her home country to do and is an immigrant to this country. And she gets slapped in the face and called a whore.
Yeah. France, not just France, many places do have problems with immigrants who refuse to adapt, who refuse to, what's the word? I always forget the word.
Assimilate.
Assimilate. That is the word. I should know that because I'm such a big Star Trek fan. Anyway, it is a problem. And I know many of these people are fleeing places that, are not ideal.
Yeah.
it's just it's a religious thing, and I can't understand it.
Well, let's be clear, though. I want to dig into that, because oftentimes, like for example, with the FGM issue that we've talked about and the connection between FGM and Islam, there will often be critiques that say these actions are not dictated by the religion, and sometimes violent actions are dictated by religion, and sometimes they aren't. I want to make the argument that we don't even need to focus on that semantic game of whether the actions are dictated by the religious text or not. Let's just say that it's overlapping into culture, right? And we have to say, fine, whatever it is that you believe the religion says about X or Y, it has translated into a problem in the culture of some who follow the particular religion. And I find it to be a total red herring when the argument becomes like when we interviewed Suleimeh Anderson about the FGM issue. She argued that the religious text we pointed to in Islam that justified or okayed FGM were not taken very seriously by most Muslims. It was a sort of weasel statement in the sense that, you know, if it's there, it's there, and who are you to say? Maybe you don't take it seriously, and maybe someone else does. Although Suleimeh is not even Muslim, I want to just remind everybody of that. But if it has been integrated into the culture in a way that is becoming a problem, then we still are able to have that conversation. I don't think it delegitimizes the conversation.
No, I mean, for me, religion is culture, because, well, let's be honest, religion isn't real. So it's just something you do.
In some countries more than others, right? There's a blurry, a line that is sometimes more defined and sometimes more blurry between religion and culture in different countries and for different religions.
I guess you could say that, but for me, just flat out, religion is culture. And so the FGM thing, I would say, yes, it's cultural, but it's still being influenced by religion.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
I'm on Twitter at @Pakman. Lewis is on Twitter at Lewis Motamedi. We will take a break. There is massive construction going on in the studio. We've been, or above our studio. We've been talking about it on the bonus show. If you're curious about what the deal is, check out the last couple of bonus shows. 4 people have been killed in a mass shooting in the Israeli city of Tel Aviv. 6 wounded were evacuated to area hospitals in varying condition as of this morning. We have video of the attack. Before we play it, I will mention the video could be disturbing to some. This is video of the shooting from inside the Sarona market, and we will play that video with no audio now for those who are watching along with us. It is very, very disturbing. The 4 victims have been identified, ranging in age from 32 to 58. 2 Palestinian shooters opened fire at the Sarona market. I was just there last summer. It's a very crowded area in Tel Aviv. Shops, restaurants, it's often packed, especially at night. The attackers were dressed as Hasidic Jews. They've been identified as being from a village in the southern West Bank near Hebron, both in their 20s. Both entered Israel illegally. The Islamist terrorist group Hamas has praised the attack but has not taken responsibility. Residents of Hebron and the Palestinian West Bank were reportedly shooting fireworks into the sky in celebration of these heinous attacks. Pastries were being handed out in celebration in Tulkarm, another Palestinian city. Pictures of those pastry disbursements were published to Twitter. Police officers shot one of the suspects and the other surrendered. This is the second location, Lewis, that I hung out at last summer, which has been victimized by terror attacks. The last was a couple of sort of side-by-side restaurants near the Dizengoff and Gordon intersection, where I actually both stayed and had breakfast almost every day during my trip last year. And a lot of people, when I got back, were asking, does it feel unsafe? And it really doesn't, even though now, in less than a year, 2 locations, which I hung out at with absolutely no concerns in the world, have been victimized by terror attacks.
Yeah, well, is it safe and does it feel safe are 2 very different questions, right?
And statistically, it still is very safe, right?
Yeah, statistically it is. But you can be in the safest place in the world and not feel safe. And when things like this happen, that enters into people's minds. It stays there. And I, without a doubt, after every time this happens, the residents feel less safe.
And you also have to sort of remember that we often hear after an attack like this happens and Hamas, this time not taking responsibility but praising the attack, a lot of people will say, well, David, Hamas is not the Palestinian Authority or Fatah. Hamas is separate. That's true, but the Palestinian Authority and Fatah have also they've not really condemned the specific attacks. They came out with this just bizarrely mush-mouthed statement saying, well, we are not in favor of attacks which kill civilians, period, which is a very specifically wordsmithed way of not saying you condemn attacks by Palestinians on these areas. You're saying, well, anything that leads to civilian deaths we're not in favor of as a strategy. And it was, yeah, it's better than Hamas cheering, right? I mean, it is better than that. But practically speaking, how different is it? It's different, but it's not drastically different.
Not very different, but it's better. Yeah, this whole thing's pretty unfortunate, and the video is pretty disturbing.
The video is very disturbing, and you just see the term terrorism is thrown around a lot, and sometimes it's thrown around accurately, sometimes it isn't. When you see this video and you see the terror in the eyes of people and the scrambling, it's almost this cartoonish, your legs start pushing, but it's almost like you're on ice. You just can't go anywhere. I mean, that is the level of chaos and terror that this causes. And this is as I mentioned, this would be like being in, downtown Crossing in Boston, or a very, very busy intersection of New York City, and a haphazard mass shooting starting where people just start being shot dead right in front of you. That's what this is. And sometimes it's very easy to say, well, I mean, it's look at where it's happening. This is not unexpected. Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, if you consider where this is, and if you consider the level of security that exists even just in malls in Tel Aviv, this is not something that is unsurprising. And as I mentioned, when I was there, the idea that someone was about to run through and start shooting really was nowhere in my mind.
Yeah, but then also there's the terror, the bombing thing, right? And I can't help but think that was probably entering into the minds of many of these people as well. The idea that you might be at the center of an explosion that's about to happen as well. And there was one guy who seemed to try and hit one of the attackers over with the head with a chair.
Yeah.
Other than that, I really didn't see anyone try to subdue them. I mean, it was, who knows what I would do in that situation? It's chaotic. Yeah. You don't know where they are. They're dressed like Jews. I mean, it's crazy.
And I think that's we've talked about that before. If you were on a plane when an attempted hijacking began, some people say, oh, I would definitely take action. But who really knows?
Here's the thing. When you're on a plane, you have nowhere to run to. So it's either you take action or you almost certainly die. So either way, I mean, do you definitely die, or do you maybe die?
Right. No, certainly a consideration. And the broader context here, the month of Ramadan, the Muslim holy month, often a context which seems to correlate at minimum with increased attacks in certain parts of the world.